Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Grace. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate that. What a surprise. Yeah, it is a big surprise. I thought I'd better do one this week. I'll probably do one. I'll probably do another one next week with, hi, Bree. Thanks for joining. Hi, Sandra. Good to see you again, Sandra. Hello. Hi, everyone from Melbourne, Australia. So I'll just say that. I'll just translate that. Hi ho. Don't call me a hoe. Yeah, Joe ho, same thing. Last week I did call rabbits hoes. What I meant to say was rabbit holes, like people going down rabbit holes on the internet. And I accidentally said rabbit hose. Since then, I've received a lot of hate from the rabbit community, and they tried to cancel me. Um, yeah, so unfortunately, the rabbit community has turned against me because of that. I apologized to them many times, and unfortunately, they wouldn't accept my apology. The rabbit host, I mean, the rabbit people, I find a little bit too, sensitive. I find them very sensitive, very emotional. But that makes sense. But anyway, let's hope today I don't insult another species. Yeah, thanks, Mary. I really appreciate that. Rabbits are sensitive. They are very sensitive. Unfortunately, yeah, I'm just getting like the whole community's come after me, attacked me personally, said that I'm against rabbits in general. Everyone here knows that's not true. I've always been a massive supporter of the rabbit community. I stood with them during their protests. And unfortunately, just because I mispronounced rabbit holes, hose to rabbit holes, or the other way around, I've since, my life has been destroyed, unfortunately. Yeah, lost my family. I've lost my friends. I've lost everyone because of that just mispronunciation. And it goes to show that cancel culture is still alive and well. Cancel culture still exists. And unfortunately, I was one of those people to experience it. Hi, Michelle. Good to see you. Anyway, moving on from my personal tragedy that I've been going through here in Brisbane, Australia. I just wanted to say today, hi, Dave from California. So good to see you, Dave. Thanks for coming back. Really appreciate that. I just wanted to say that today I wanted to talk about something. Uh, one of the things I haven't been doing a lot of recently is talking about Trump. In fact, I've kind of, it's a weird situation that I'm having at the moment. I feel like, every time I mention Donald Trump or something that he does, I get an attack of boredness of I feel bored or I feel like, oh God, I feel exhausted. Like mentioning Trump, talking about Trump. I don't know what it is. Maybe I have Trump derangement syndrome. But whatever it is, for some reason, I just don't even want to talk about it. And I think part of it is because there's like 1,000 people already talking about everything Trump does. And I feel like me just going over that is kind of boring or it's not even that interesting to me. You know what I mean? So I feel like I don't even feel. And the other thing is I feel like I'm pretty sure Trump's not. We don't need to talk about that. Us exactly, yeah. And Trump equals exhaustion. It does. I actually feel exhausted thinking about or talking about it. I actually do. I just feel like and part of it is repetition, because if you just keep repeating the same thing about the other person, you're not adding. And again, like me saying stuff, I've already said it 1,000 times. I don't think I need to say it 100 other times. I feel like for me, there's more interesting things than just Donald Trump at the moment. And it includes Donald Trump as well. But I think one of the things I've realized is for those of you who are watching and haven't seen me before, I'm obviously in Australia, the land down under. And in this amazing country, Australia, who is going to do very well in the World Cup soccer. I'm very hopeful that we're going to get through the next round of the World Cup soccer. Is that in the last 6 months we've seen the rise of a far right wing party in Australia called One Nation. Hi Joe, good greetings from Michigan. Oh, the trajectory. I haven't seen you for a while. Thank you for coming back. I really appreciate that. the trajectory. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Michigan. Oh, I love Michigan. Never been there, but I've heard really good things about it. But also a key swing state. So you want progressives and left wing people in key swing states. Um, hello from North Carolina, Kathy. North Carolina, what a great place North Carolina is. Thank you so much for joining, Kathy. I really appreciate that. Good to be here, Joe. Thank you. I also like South Carolina. So if you're out there, I don't have a favorite. I like them both. I like both South Carolina and North Carolina equally, right? Just like Donald Trump, when they asked Donald Trump which favorite Bible he likes, the Old Testament or the New Testament, right? Trump will always say, I like them both equally because he doesn't want to offend anyone in the round. So the same with me. I love North Carolina. I love South Carolina, but I love them equally. Okay. And just one more time, if there are rabbits in North Carolina, if there are rabbits in the South Carolina, I also love those rabbits as much as the rabbits in Michigan. So for me, the rabbits, where they're in America, it doesn't matter whether they're red state, blue state. I love them all equally. Okay, I get 40 plus. Trump isn't even religious. I know I get 40 plus Substack notifications in the morning, and throughout the day, sometimes I have to bypass because it's all Trump all the time. Dave, that is so true. Dave, I think I've got to say this. I don't think it's just me. I've been wondering whether Trump isn't even religious. Exactly. That's what was so funny when they asked him about the Bible. He was obviously like just a, unlike me, who loves North Carolina as much as South Carolina, that I'm being 100% genuine when I say that. Okay? 100% genuine when I say that. Even though I don't really know much about the places. Anyway, but I will say what Dave from California just said. I actually think I was wondering if it was just me. I wonder if it was just me but the other day I was talking to Melissa A. Moore, who, we have that show called The Outsiders. We have a podcast together called The Outsiders. Some people say it's the best podcast ever. I think the New York Times said The Outsiders is the number one podcast that people should listen to and watch. That's what the New York Times said. I think the Washington Post said the same thing. There's a lot of people out there talking about The Outsiders, saying it's the best podcast. But anyway, that I was talking to Melissa the other day, and I said to Melissa, is it just me, or are you sick of talking about Donald Trump? And she went, oh my God, I'm the same. So I felt bad. I felt bad about saying that I'm exhausted talking about Donald Trump, but I actually think I'm not the only one. I think people are getting exhausted about talking about Donald Trump. I think it's more common than people are realizing, and I think it makes sense because we've been talking about this one person all this time, and also a lot of times people who comment on it are repeating what other people say. Like if I come on here today and say, well, Donald Trump is doing crypto stuff, how is Nibbles, Joe? Nibbles is doing very well. She's just down there. She's very well. Is that what he wants? Is that a win for him that we turn away? No. You know what? I actually think it's not. It's always good to be here, Tridrick. I don't think it is a win for Donald Trump, and I'll explain why I don't think it is a win for Donald Trump. Because Trump wants attention, right? And a big part of politics, Nibbles for president. Yeah, I think Nibbles would be a great president. And I think Donald Trump loves people talking about him. And so the less people that talk about him, the better it will be. Because remember, in my opinion, hi Tracy, thanks for joining. I don't think Trump is going to run again. I think it's because of his age, I don't think he's going to run again. So for that reason, also, hi Marnie, good to see you again, Marnie. For that reason, I actually think that we have to, in a sense, I'm not saying stop talking about Trump because he's obviously very relevant, but for me, there's a bigger picture, right? Hi Joanne, thanks for joining. The bigger picture for me is why was someone like Donald Trump elected? And in Australia, why is someone like this far right wing party called Pauline Hanson and One Nation, right? Why are they gaining power in Australia? In the UK, you have Nigel Farage. I hate when people say he can't run again as if it's even an option. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I agree, Sandra. So I think as time goes by, hi Donna, good to see you. I think as time goes by, Donald Trump will become less and less relevant, right? If he loses the midterms, he will become even more less relevant. It's also important to say that a lot of what Donald Trump does is not actually his own personal stuff. Like, for example, sometimes he'll do what JD Vance wants him to do, right? Other times he would do what Marco Rubio wants him to do. So Trump is easily persuaded by people around him. So it's not like Trump is this individual who's doing all these things against the system. There are a lot of people in his party who agree with him. I think the bigger picture, the thing that I find more interesting for myself, and the thing that I think is I think a more serious thing that people should be talking about is what is happening with far right wing parties gaining traction all around the world, right? Because the far right wing party in Australia is not rising because of Trump, it's rising because of economic stuff that's happening in Australia. Trump got into power because of people felt their lives were not doing well, right? You are absolutely correct, Aria. You are absolutely correct. Narcissists will do anything for attention, whether it's positive or negative. It doesn't matter. Any attention will help. Yeah, like and 100%. And this is the thing that worries me about a lot of people in the media. They want to. They. It's very hard. A lot of people don't watch mainstream media anymore. And if you're an online influencer, right, the best thing you can do is create conflict, right? So as you know, conflict is what gets people clicks and subscribers, right? And that's a lot of people in the online world. They will create conflict, and so they will talk about Donald Trump to create because they think it's good for clicks and stuff, right? Now, I myself I never picked a fight with the rabbit community just to get more clicks and subscribers. I never did that. The rabbit community came after me, right? Without I had no intention of starting this war with the rabbit community. It was an accidental thing that happened. But a lot of people in the online community, they will pick fights with certain groups to get them more attention. Right? I don't do that. Other people do that. So and again, I think that's the other thing. Like Trump loves attention, right? And my worry is the rabbit community is full of hipsters. I agree. I agree. Yeah. And the other thing about the rabbit community is, this is just personally with me, and as I said, a massive supporter of the rabbit community. Is I find that I think part of the problem is I have a dog, and they know I have a dog. And I think that they're not big fans of dogs. And I think they're using me to get to Nibbles. So I think a lot of the hate from the community is heading towards Nibbles, which she doesn't deserve. Um, but that's the thing. Like that's the thing with this particular thing that I'm talking about is that I think Trump loves attention. What does Nibbles think of the rabbit community? She's not a big fan. She's not a big fan of the rabbit community. I don't think. Yeah, she's not a big fan of it. Yeah, I don't think, and I've got to say this. I'm not a big fan of the rabbit. I've lost a little bit of love for the rabbit community after what I went through. Having my life turned upside down. Right, losing friends, losing family. Right. Yeah, I don't think anyone knows what it's like to be cancelled by the rabbit community. Once it happens to you, you'll never be the same person again. It's quite an extraordinary feeling. I'm going to write a book about it. I'll probably write a book about it. I will talk about it one day. Exactly. Thank you, Kimmy. And when I write that book, it's going to be you're going to be shocked at what I've been through in the last week. It's been quite an extraordinary situation. Let's move on from the rabbit community, but I just think that a lot of people are tired of talking about Donald Trump. And I don't think I'm the only one. And I think my problem is if Donald Trump moves aside in 2028, right? And then what happens is Donald Trump, if he's still around, will continue to try to have influence no matter who becomes the Republican candidate, right? And he get the more influence Donald Trump will get will depend on how much people pay attention to him. If the mainstream media and people online continue to pay attention to everything Donald Trump says, even though he's no longer the president, he gets more power. He gets power by people paying attention to it. The less attention that people give him, I feel like he has less power, right? And so I think when Donald Trump decides to step aside and step aside, and then I think if I was the media, I would go, okay, well, Trump is no longer the president. It's so hard to stop bitching about him, though. Yeah, look, I get it. For me, I feel exhausted talking about Trump. In fact, talking about the fact that I don't want to talk about Trump anymore. I'm not saying I'm never going to talk about him, but like talk about him less. Talking about what I'm saying now, I feel like a burden has been lifted from my shoulder because I have secretly, been in the closet about not wanting to talk about Donald Trump. Sometimes when I post stuff on Substack about Donald Trump, a little bit of me dies. A little bit of me dies. I think, oh, I'm sure I can talk about something else. And again, I think the reason for that is because I think Trump is the symptom, and I don't think Trump is the reason why far right wing parties all around the world are gaining traction. They're gaining I'm more interested. Tell us your secret, Joe. Tell us your secret, Joe. I just think like hearing the same thing over and over again every day becomes repetitive, becomes boring, and I'd rather spend more of my time thinking about things that why was Donald Trump elected, right? Why is a far right wing party? Why is a far right wing party in Australia gaining traction? Why is the far right wing group in England number one in the polls? Why in Germany right now the number one party is a far right wing group? So again, my interest is looking around the world and going, why are people like Trump? We have a couple of rabbits living in our garden. Yeah, David, and this has got nothing. I'll just go just as an aside thing. Have your rabbits talked about me in the last week or so? Like, what have your rabbits discussed me at all? Have they just? It doesn't matter. I'm sure they probably don't even know me, but I'm just saying, like, has there been any negativity towards me? I don't know if you were here last week, David, but I accidentally called him hose. It was an accident. So if you do have rabbits at home, David, I'd really appreciate if you just let them know that I'm sorry, but at the same time, I feel like they overreacted. Yeah. So I'll leave that with you, David, to sort of, do that with them. And he meant to say holes. Yeah, I meant to say holes. Rabbit holes. No. Yeah, no. The holes? Rabbit holes. Yeah, rabbit holes. That's right. It's June 30 tomorrow. It's the first day of the second half of the year. Yeah. So for me, I think I don't talk rabbit. Okay, that's a shame. That's a shame. Because I can tell you, when rabbits want to talk, they can definitely talk. Yeah. And I'm not saying the whole community was against me, but what I'm saying is, hi Teresa, thanks for joining. What I'm saying to everyone here, including Teresa, who just joined, is that the rabbit community tried to destroy my life. And it's something that I would appreciate if David could talk to his rabbits about. But if you know of any rabbits, maybe just let them know. Yeah, like stand up for me. Stand up for me. Defend me. You know what I mean? But again, like I think going back to Trump, I think the exhaustion about talking about Donald Trump is that it doesn't explain See, the thing is if you start believing Trump is the problem, like the only problem, then what happens is Trump goes away and then he's replaced by another MAGA person. And then the problem never gets solved, right? And the only way I feel you can solve this far right wing problem that is affecting like a lot of the planet is to address the underlying issues of why people in all these Western countries are suddenly wanting to vote for far right wing parties. And I think the one thing that is um, underlying these problems is basically people's cost of living. But I think ultimately the number one thing that I realize is housing. Housing, affordable housing, uh, affordable rent is what I think is one of the underlying conditions of why so many people are moving to the far right. Okay. That's definitely one of the reasons they did it in Australia. In Australia, house prices have doubled over the last 5 years. Rents have doubled, right? And a lot of the younger people, I'm talking about Gen Z, I'm talking about millennials, um, are now the biggest voting group. I think a lot of people for many, many years, the biggest voting group in many places like America, Australia, the UK was boomers. They were the biggest voting group. So it's in that. So if you're a boomer and you bought a home 10, 20 years ago, ditto Joe, the hedge funds are buying up homes. Yeah, but it's not even I will say this, it's not even like in Australia. In Australia, it's not so much the hedge funds and stuff like that. I think you'll find that a lot of times with this stuff about the corporations, that they only actually make it's actually they aren't what they affect is a smaller proportion. Mary, forget about buying a house in Melbourne or Sydney. Unfortunately, I had to move an hour out of Sydney and hate it. Yeah, out of Melbourne, sorry, and hate it. Yeah, exactly. Home prices in Australia are a massive, massive problem, right? But I also looked in America; it's also a massive problem there as well. And a lot of people who voted, for example, Zohran Mamdani, right, in New York City, or a lot of the other democratic socialists, one of the top things they talked about was affordable housing and affordable rent, right? And unless this gets solved in America, Australia, Europe, UK, you're going to continue to see the rise of the far right wing parties. Now, in New York, right? Yeah, I think it's different. Housing is cheaper in the USA. I think it is, but it's still expensive. Like it's still very expensive in America to buy a home. In most places, it's still very expensive compared to say 10, 15, 20 years ago. The other thing I would say, Mary, is their wages. The American wages are generally a little bit lower than ours. So even though their house prices are a little bit less, our wages a little bit higher. Um, but also, Mary, they don't have negative gearing. Homes in Michigan, um, homes in Michigan are way too high. Exactly. Oh wow, that's really saying something. Yeah, exactly. That's true. Yeah. So yeah, it is. Look, but it's America, Australia, Europe, and the biggest voting group at the moment, as I was saying before, is no longer boomers. So if you're a boomer, I meant Marilyn, if you're a boomer and you bought a home 10, 20 years ago, you're probably doing quite well because home prices have gone up, right? And so a lot of political parties will make it easier, they want to make home prices go up because a lot of the people who bought homes, a lot of those are the people who vote, right? And if you want to bring home prices down a little bit, and then you want to make it more affordable, right? Then there is a downside to that, and the downside to that is people who bought a home won't have as much money, right? You know, and therefore there is like a conflict between younger people who haven't got into the housing market yet and older people who've bought a home and their prices have gone up, right? And they don't want those prices to come down. The youth are being pried out of the dream. Exactly. And that is, in my opinion, I think if you look at the data, the number one issue that is underpinning all these populist groups is the housing industry, the housing market. Um, I look at the real estate in the USA, and you can buy a nice home for 300. I would just cry. Yeah. Now remember, our wages are higher. Yeah. So our wages are higher. So a $500,000 home, and also because the US dollar is worth more than the Australian dollar. So you can't make a direct, you can't make a direct comparison um, with that sort of price. But yeah, I do think Mary generally it's a little bit cheaper in America, but they have less wages and other things as well. So I think, but yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it's still very hard to buy a home, and until political parties, right, work out a way how to make it easier for young people not having to spend like half their money or 60 on paying back a mortgage or trying to get a home. Until that is resolved, you will continue to see people like Donald Trump and far right wing parties all around the world, because what they're basically saying is we have tried center left, we have tried center right, and my life stays the same. Nothing changes, right? Um, and therefore they then try to do something completely different, which is go to a populist party. In New York, they might go to Zoran Mandani or someone like Zoran Mandani, who's more like a democratic socialist. In other places, they might go to someone like MAGA or Trump, right? So I think what you're seeing, yeah. So it's uh, if you're part of a centre left or a centre right government, you have to, yeah, you're going to have to address housing as your main issue to bring people back to centre left or centre right. Yeah. Otherwise, and again, a lot of this is being driven by your age, right? And again, if there's a conflict between people who want their home prices to go up and younger people who want their home prices to come down. The truth of the matter is, there will be losers either way. If you bring home prices down, people who own homes will lose some of their money, right? And also, if you're a retiree, if you bought a home and then you want to sell it to retire, you might have less money to retire on. So it's not all one way, right? But I think we can at least admit that young people should have a chance at buying homes the same way my generation did, which is Gen X, and boomers did. I think they should have the same chance of buying a home that we did. And I think that's a big part of why we're seeing in the right. And this is what I mean by I don't want to talk about Trump that much, because I don't think Trump really, in this particular thing, I don't think Trump is really changing that, right? Still would have been a problem if Kamala Harris won, right? House prices would not have dropped if Kamala Harris won. So the underlying conditions, right, for why people are moving into like these areas is going to be there, Trump or no Trump, right? So again, so that's what I mean by we have to sort of, so whether it's the Democrats, if they come into power in 2028, they can't just come in and say we beat Donald Trump, right? Because that's not the reason. A lot of people don't care that it's Donald Trump. They don't care whether it's a Democrat, and they don't care if it's a Republican. What they care about is their life, like cost of living, right? Housing, and that's their main thing they're concerned about, right? And they don't care who gets them that. They don't care if it's Donald Trump. They don't care if it's Kamala Harris. They just want their lives to be better. And so if Democrats win the election in 2028, they're going to have to, they can't come in and just say we beat Trump. They got to come in with some bold policies, right? Hi, Mac New, thanks for joining. Some bold policies to do with housing or cost of living, right? And I think a Democratic Party that comes in, because the thing is, if you want people to vote for you, you can't just tell people what you're against. You have to tell people what you're for, right? And I think that was a problem in 2024. The Democrats were saying Trump is bad, 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 which I agree with. But people want to know what you're going to do to make their lives better, right? And so that's the thing that's going to get people voting. And that's the reason why I think people like Zoran Landami and some of these other more progressive, some could say like on the fringes of communism. I don't know. You make up your own mind. There's certainly one of them. I can't remember her name from New York, who certainly flirted with communism. But true. But how come the same doesn't hold true for true? But how come the same doesn't hold true for Republicans? Well, I think it does because if you look at one of the main reason why Trump is so unpopular is not because of awful things that he says. It's not because he makes fun of people. It's not because he lies every day. That's not the reason Trump is unpopular. The number reason Trump is unpopular is because the economy is doing badly. He came in and he said, "I'm going to fix inflation. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix that," and he just lied. And therefore, people are now turned against him. So it's not working for Trump at all. So I think there is this thing at the moment that's happened since post-COVID, and it's not just America; it's happening a lot of places around the Western countries around the world. Is where there's this incumbency thing, right? There's like an incumbency thing happening at the moment. A lot of people don't pay attention to politics, so they blame who's ever in power. A lot of Americans vote against their own interests. Exactly. Yeah, David. Yeah. But I think it is changing a bit, David. I think at the moment, what you're seeing, and this is because a lot of people don't pay attention to politics like they used to, because, a lot of people, they're at home, they're watching streaming services, they're watching TikTok videos that are funny videos. Like a lot of people are not engaging with news at all. So to them, it's not about whether they don't look at Democrats or Republicans, they look at what their life is like, right? So if their rents are going up, um, uh, and if the rents are going up, hope they can't afford to buy a home, that's their number one concern. It's not about whether Trump is a bad person. It's about their personal life and their cost of living. That's their number one concern. And so what happens is there's this incumbency thing where if you're the incumbent government, you get blamed for everything that happens, whether it's your fault or not. It might be your fault, but might not be your fault. For example, with Joe Biden, after COVID, we had post-COVID inflation, which affected America, Australia, around the world. And people in America blamed Joe Biden for post-COVID inflation because he was the incumbent government, right? And people will say, but it happened. Of course, it wasn't his fault, but I'm saying is people are not paying attention to politics. So they just blame who's ever in power. This is the problem for the Democrats. If they get into power, they will then be held responsible for anything that happens while they're in power. And what I mean by this is if house prices don't go down, if rent prices stay the same, I guarantee you within 6 months, you will see the Democrats become unpopular. What is it? Not critical thinkers, Joe. Yeah. Australia still hasn't recovered. Prices are so high. Exactly. Have to run, Joe, but thank you. Thanks, Kimmy. Thanks for that. Yeah. So you're exactly right, Mary. Things are still very expensive in Australia. Things are very expensive in Australia, and that's just, that's the way it is. So in my opinion, I just think, that's what So I just think a lot of this stuff that's going on is an incumbency thing. And so if I was a Democrat, I want to see less far right wing parties going up around the world. And it's pretty obvious now that it's not just a Trump thing, right? And Trump will probably get replaced by someone like JD Vance. What I'm finding interesting at the moment is that I think what JD Vance is doing at the moment now, an election 2 years from now is a long time. Anything can happen. But I will say this: JD Vance is in my opinion, probably going to be the candidate at the next election. And I'll explain why. Because he's been going around, he wrote a book and he's been going around and he's been trying to be more moderate, right? Haven't help us is worse than Trump. Yeah, exactly. But the difference is with JD Vance is JD Vance doesn't do the mean tweets. He doesn't do, he doesn't do a lot of that, the constant giving people nicknames. He doesn't go after reporters the way Trump does, but he loves a lot of his policies. So a lot of people who are like, Trump just should shut up and not pick fights with everyone and do this and that. Well, that's JD Vance. So the same policies as Trump, but without all the other bad stuff. That could be attractive to a lot of people in the Republican Party who are sick of Trump picking fights with everyone, right? What if you had a Trump-like person who's much younger than Trump? JD Vance is very young, who's a lot more intelligent than Trump, who's nicer to reporters. What if all that, but you still had Trump-like policies? And the other thing is people like Tucker Carlson. People like Tucker Carlson have said they have left the Republican Party. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, right? They've all left the Republican Party. However, in the last 2 weeks, Tucker Carlson has said he really likes JD Vance. I think that is a very, very big signal to what's going to happen. Tucker Carlson, who became this flamethrower in the Republican Party, right, who is considered sort of more anti-establishment than Trump is now saying, I'm leaving the Republican Party, but I like JD Vance, right? So in my opinion, what's going to happen is JD Vance will run as the anti-establishment candidate supported by Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Thomas Massey as the real America First people. They are the real Trump, and they will run as Trump didn't do what he said he was going to do. Trump ran as America First, but he never did America First. JD Vance is going to run as the real America First, and he will be supported by Tucker Carlson, which he already said he's going to support. He already likes him. He will lose big time. See, let me say this trajectory. Let me just say this right. This is why people should be a little bit, I'm not saying he's going to win, but this is why people should be a little bit alarmed, right? If a Democrat, a moderate Democrat gets into, like let's say it's Josh Shapiro, right? Because Josh Shapiro has a chance of winning, right, in the Democrat side. Josh Shapiro is very pro-Israel, right? Josh Shapiro is, don't get me wrong, I don't hate Josh Shapiro, but I'm just saying, I'm talking in terms of electoral, right? I'm not talking about my own opinion. I'm talking about the electorate, right? In 2 years from now. Josh Shapiro is very pro-Israel. Josh Shapiro is an establishment candidate. If JD Vance ran with the help of Tucker Carlson, anti-establishment, Marjorie Taylor Greene, anti-establishment, Thomas Massey, there could be a position, right? There could be a position where JD Vance pivots to the left of Josh Shapiro on the wars overseas. Now think about that. JD Vance pivots to the left of the Democrats, because if you listen to Tucker Carlson in terms of Iran, Gaza, and all that, is more critical than Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Josh Shapiro. Now, in my opinion, Tucker Carlson is a grifter. In my opinion, Tucker Carlson is not a good person. So, but I'm just giving you the opinion, like how it could be to the electorate. To the electorate, it could be that JD Vance is the anti-establishment guy, right? Who doesn't want is away from the wars, and then you have Josh Shapiro, who's closer to Israel, who's closer to AIPAC, who's close. You know what I mean? So he could, in a strange way, become the anti-establishment candidate, and then the Democrats again become the establishment candidate. And in this day and age, establishment candidates don't do that well. So I don't know. 2 years from now, everything could be different. But I'm just giving you a scenario where, where you know, it 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 could change how they could out pivot the Democrats, right? Then what happens? What happens? What is it? Dave from California. Although I can't stand DeSantis, and I'm glad he crushed, but he will be a comeback kid, in my opinion. See, I don't agree with that, Dave. I don't agree with that, and the reason I don't agree with that is because um, DeSantis is a very establishment candidate, and someone like JD Vance, when you actually hear him talk, like he criticized, that, um, I just don't feel like this is the time for Ron DeSantis. I think Ron DeSantis is too connected to the establishment part, um, of of that party. He's not a populist in the same way. JD Vance started as a populist, remember, and then sort of became morphed into a Trump-like party. But yeah, so he could go back into that. I like John. I also Mary. I also like John Ossoff as well. I sure hope he isn't Dan DeSantis is purchased. Yeah, I got to say, in terms of annoying, DeSantis is I find the most annoying out of all of them. Just the way he talks. Yeah. But yeah, I just don't feel like in this day and age. I don't know. I don't know about DeSantis. I just can't see it yet. I hope I'm wrong, Joe. Yeah. I think it's more, I think it's going to be someone like JD Vance, to be honest with you. Only because, unless, and again, 2 years from now, it could be a whole different environment. Do you know what I mean? Everything could be different 2 years from now. So, but I'm just thinking, if the election was held today or in 6 months, I think JD Vance would have the best chance. The fingers in a chocolate pudding. Remember that? Yeah, that's right. I remember that. I remember that, Mary. Yeah. And he was obsessed with, what about Rubio? Well, Rubio is, again, a very establishment candidate. He's the kind of person that, he comes from like the John McCain, or no, not, I don't think it'll be Don Jr. And I think he's very establishment candidate. I don't know. But then again, in 2 years from now, people might look at politics the wrong way. Um, yeah. I think people are looking things the wrong way these days. Yeah, I think 2 years from now, an establishment candidate might be more attractive. You don't know. You just don't know what the environment's going to be like in 2 years' time. But at the moment, I do think JD Vance is probably the one with the most momentum. And having support of people like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey will give him that credibility of being like the outsider, the real America First guy. So, and again, that could work against Democrats if they elect. This is the problem with the Democratic Party, right? I don't know what it's become who they vote for in New York will be very different to who they vote for in Pennsylvania or the Midwest states. So you're going to have a Democratic Party that is a much bigger tent than it used to be, because you have like Bernie Sanders, right? But I have to say this, like one of the what's her name? She was a Democrat who ran at the New York election. Is it Avril? I think her name is Avril. And just have a look. Avril, New York. No, it's not Avril Lavigne. That's not her. New York elections. I can't remember her name. Anyway, she was one of the candidates who just won in the New York congressional elections, right? I can't remember her name. I think it's AV something. Anyway, CNN, anyway, she says she's a democratic socialist. However, CNN showed all these tweets that she did like 4 or 5 years ago. Jaz McCrory, yeah, 4 or 5 years ago. And I can tell you, like, they were full-blown communist tweets. I mean, like, full-blown communists, praising Stalin, right? Praising the Communist Manifesto. Um, she called Joe Biden a rapist. She called Joe Biden a rapist. She said that Kamala Harris was an idiot. Uh, so she really hated Joe Biden. She really hated Kamala Harris. She hated the Democrats in general, except for like Bernie Sanders. She and a lot of the stuff, she says she wanted to. She said let's seize the means of production, which is like basically the government owns all things. Like that's not my policies. Like that. Now she says she deleted it, and then she says, oh, she doesn't agree with everything. But then when she was asked in a recent interview, do you still consider yourself a communist? She refused to answer whether she was a communist. Now, to me, I think there's a difference between that and a democratic socialist, right? A democratic socialist is still a socialist, but not a communist. And they believe in the government should have some control and that private industry should have some control, right? A communist believes that the government has control of almost everything, right? A communist doesn't believe. A communist doesn't believe in, for example, elections and things like that, right? Democratic socialists believe in elections. So if you don't like what they do, you can kick them out. So there are differences between them. I am definitely against communism. All right. I definitely do not want a communist to win. So I will say that I think communism is bad. It's never been a good thing, right? I'm as an Australian, I'm a social democrat. I'm a social democrat. In Europe, they're social democrats. In Scandinavia, they're social democrats, right? So I think, Joe, who do you think is the likely Democrat front runner for 2028? I don't know. Dave, I actually really don't know. I actually don't know because the thing is where is the enthusiasm? The enthusiasm in the Democratic Party at the moment can seem it's coming from the left wing of the party. However, we're still only seeing a lot of this stuff happen in places like New York or Colorado, or maybe Colorado, right? So more left wing states. We haven't really seen it in more purple states or blues or red states. And you might have a situation, right? You might have a situation where during the primaries, the Democrats pick someone who is good, who is someone that they love, that the people love, who is more to the left than America, and they pick him, and then they put him up, right, to go against, say, JD Vance, and they're not as palatable, right, to the American people. Chevalier was that lady in New York that won. Yeah, that's the one, Chevalier. Yeah. I'm concerned about her. Now, I will say this. One or two or three people in a party, right, doesn't mean the whole party. The interesting thing is that the Democratic Party is a big party. It's a big tent party, right? And you will have people in that party who are more centrist, and then you'll have people who are more progressive. Now, in my opinion, Chevalier, if that's how you pronounce her name, if she is actually a communist, because it could be, she might actually be, it might actually be a communist. I don't think that's a good thing for the Democratic Party. And I want to say this: in America, because you don't have preferential voting, which is called ranked choice voting. In America, you don't have ranked choice voting, right? And because you don't have ranked choice voting, you don't have a lot of smaller parties, right? In Australia, you will have the two major parties, and then you would have a few smaller parties. On the left, the more progressive side, you have the Greens Party. On the more far right side, you have One Nation, right, which is like a Trump-like party. Now, that way, what happens is the centre-left party, if people are in the centre-left party, who are like Chevalier, she wouldn't be in our centre-left party. She would go and join the Greens, or she would go and join another party. But in America, she doesn't really have a choice, right? Because running as an independent or something, you don't get the same support in America. So she's running in the Democratic Party, even though, to be honest with you, the Democratic Party is not a communist party, right? It's a capitalist party. And so for that reason, in a lot of other countries, she would be running in a different party. But in America, she feels like the only party that she can run in is a Democratic Party. I would like to see, in my opinion, in America to have ranked choice voting, and people like her can go and start their own party. Could be the Communist Party, could be the Democratic Socialists of America, could be whatever. And then what happens is you can vote for those people, right? And then they can give their preferences to the Democrats. So you vote for them, but then if they don't win, the vote goes to the Democrats. So that way you don't lose your vote. Let's have a look here. A lot of Democrat strategists said she was a gift to the Republican Party to use her as the face of the Dems. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, ranked choice voting seems to be the best way to go. Yes, I agree. Now, the only thing I would say about Chevalier and trying to like tie her or which is bad money, or Zoran Mandami to all the Democrats. Although I think Zoran Mandami is very different to Chevalier, in my opinion. I think he's more of a pragmatist than she is. But I will say this, is that I think it depends. I think for people like, I think a lot of people, they don't care about labels anymore, right? Labels don't mean as much as they used to. A lot of people, I would say a lot of younger people, they don't even know they don't know the difference between communism, socialism, democratic socialism, and social democracy. I can't tell you how many times I will have a conversation with someone, either online with someone who's a left-wing person, who will say to me, "Oh, we need people like her, Chevalier, because you have people like her in your country." And I'm like, hold on, Australia's not run by communists, all right? Hi, Levy, how you going? I think a lot of people on the left, some people on the left who are younger, don't know the differences between socialism, communism, social democracy, social democratic party, yeah, all that stuff. And they think it's all the same, or they think it's like a variation. But we have several parties in Canada. Yeah, exactly. In Australia, so we have social democracy. Social democracy is not even what Zoran Mandami is. Zoran Mandami has democratic socialists. Social democracy is a capitalist system, so it's capitalism, and then you try to make it kinder at the edges. So you have better healthcare, so people don't fall through the cracks, right? So you have better healthcare, you have better safety nets, all that stuff. But the structure is capitalism. It's a capitalist structure. You make your money through capitalism, and then the taxes you get from capitalism, you try to make it easier for people who slip through the gaps. Democratic socialists, which is what Zoran Mandami and other people, that's not the same thing. They believe that the government should own a lot more of the private industry, right? That government should control, not all of it, but a lot of the private industry. And by the way, there has never been a country that has been run as a democratic socialist. There's never been one. There's a communist country, there's social democracy, there's all these other types of things, but there's never been a country that's been democratic socialist. But Zoran Mandami, as the mayor of New York, he's not running New York as a democratic socialist, right? Because when you're a mayor of New York, you're not the king. You can't just go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You need to get money from the governor. There are panels that need to help. I know he's brought in the rent freeze and stuff, but that's not, a lot of countries have done rent freeze and they're not democratic socialists, right? So he's not, you know what I'm saying? Like he's governing as a progressive because he can't govern as a democratic socialist because he doesn't have that power. As a mayor, you don't have carte blanche to do whatever you want. So again, you're not seeing democratic socialism in New York. You're seeing a progressive, a center left progressive. Uh, yeah, because he's not the president, he's not the governor, he's not that. Yeah. So again, what I'm saying is young people are confusing different types of politics and they think it's all communism is not a good thing. You will never ever convince me that communism is a good thing, right? People in Australia don't like communism. People in Canada don't like communism. People in Scandinavia. This is the thing. A lot of people always say Sweden, they'll go Sweden, Norway. What's the other country? Yeah, Sweden, Norway, all those like countries like that. Like they're not communists. They're social democracies, right? They're like Australia's social democracies. They're capitalist systems, but then they try to make it easier for the people at the bottom to have more safety. It's better healthcare, better infrastructure, more, public schooling, public hospitals, all that sort of stuff. But it's not communism. It is nothing like communism. So I think I do worry that younger people are looking at someone like Chevalier, wherever her name is, and they're confusing what she is, like what some of the stuff is. It should be, to be honest, it should be a little bit concerning to people, the stuff that she's said and done. I would be concerned about that if my party in Australia had someone who'd said that stuff. My biggest issue with her is that she went on a TV show, MSN Now, I think it's called MSN Now, and the guy asked her, "Are you still a communist?" And she refused to say no. She didn't say, "I was no longer a communist," right? The Democratic Party is never going to become the Communist Party, right? And I think you can have progressives, you can have Bernie Sanders, you can have all that, but that's not communism. And I think the vast majority of American people are not going to say yes to communism, right? And nor should they. I would fight against communism as much as I would fight against Trumpism. That's how much I think it's a problem to people. Yeah, because it makes people's lives worse. Whenever it gets put into practice, it makes people's lives worse, and it doesn't make people's lives better. Um, so yeah, so I think you should be able to, again, in Australia, someone like her would be in her own party, right? She would be either in the Greens or she would be like in some, nor should they? Yeah, yeah, and yeah, exactly. They should be in the Greens or they should be in their own party. And that's the problem in America is that you only have two major parties. Therefore, you get people on the far right and then you get some communists like this one, Chevalier, and then they can't go anywhere else. So they join the major parties. In my opinion, it should be okay for them. By the way, I'm not against her being in politics. I just don't think she should be in the Democratic Party. They should have their own branch, right? It should be their own branch. And then they can give their preferences. So that means is in Australia, ranked choice voting, right? Ranked choice voting is like, for example, I don't know, you probably remember this. I think it was in Dearborn, Michigan. In Dearborn, Michigan, you had a group of people, mostly Muslim people, who were calling Joe Biden Genocide Joe. Do you remember that? They were saying Genocide Joe because of Gaza. They were saying all this stuff about him, right? Okay. Well, those people were in the Greens Party. And those people, a lot of them voted Greens as a protest vote against Joe Biden supporting Israel, right? Now, in Australia, had you had ranked choice voting, you could have voted for the Greens, and then your preference, your second vote, would have probably been for the Democrats, and therefore they would have got more of those votes, and that would have been less of a chance of someone like Donald Trump becoming president. Yeah. So that's how I feel. I feel about it very strongly. Do I feel as strongly about it as I do about rabbits? I don't know. I kind of feel rabbits are communist, to be honest with you. I do think rabbits are communist. I have never seen a rabbit work. They seem to share a lot of stuff. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I mean that's my point. I just think I think it's good to have a big tent. It's good to have progressives like Zoran Mandami, and it's good to have people like Bernie Sanders and AOC. I like them. I like them in the party. Rabbits. Oh, Levy. Yeah, I don't think you were here, but I was attacked by the rabbit community. Yeah, yeah, viciously actually, viciously attacked by the rabbit community over the last 7 days. Because last week when I did a Substack live, I was trying to say that a lot of people have gone down rabbit holes on the internet. You know, rabbit holes, like people go down rabbit holes, and instead I said rabbit hose. I called them hose rabbits, and because of that, the rabbit community has come after me quite strongly. Yeah. Um, but that's it's Levy. It's not important. That's just something that I have to live with. I will say, Levy, that if you ever don't, I would think twice about attacking the rabbit community. Um, my life, those rate rascally, yeah, my life has been turned upside down. Absolutely turned. I lost my job. I lost my family. I lost it. Nibbles doesn't even talk to me anymore. Yeah, because if Nibbles says that if I'm willing to say that against another species like rabbits, well, how does she know I'm not going to say that about dogs at some stage? She thinks it's like a slippery slope. If I start attacking rabbits, are dogs going to be next? And maybe she's got a point. Maybe she's got a point, you know? Um, but again, I apologized and I felt like that apology felt on deaf ears. And yeah, and there's nothing more I can do about it. If Nibbles decides to forgive me, I'll be happy with that. My child decides to forgive me, my family. I would love to come back into the mainstream society instead of living on the edges. But I shouldn't have said it. It was my fault, Levy. It was my fault. Anyway, I disconnected and signed on again. And my stool live. Yes, you are, Dave. Appreciate it. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Libby. And I'm glad, Libby. I'm glad, Joe, mate. Michigan is so hot, the squirrels are smearing sunscreen on their nuts. How's your wildlife holding up? Well, in Australia, it's winter. So, it's, even though it's winter in Australia, I will have to say it's probably the mildest winter I've ever experienced in Australia. Yeah. So it's kind of cold, but it's like, yeah. So climate change is definitely, you probably see what's happening in Europe at the moment. In Europe, they're having these massive heat waves. At the moment, there's this like big debate in Europe at the moment about because like only 5%. Hope John Ossoff. Yes, I hope John Ossoff as well, Mary. I like John Ossoff. I like John Ossoff as well. Now, Mary, I think you're crazy. Yeah, welcome back. I think one of John Ossoff's parents lived in Australia for a while. John Ossoff has some connection to Australia, but I can't remember what it was. Um, and you don't live in America, Melbourne, Joe. It's horrible, cold. Yeah, I do live in Brisbane, but I've got to say I've been living in Brisbane for 11 years, and this is the mildest winter I've ever experienced. But in England at the moment, the UK and Europe, they've had this massive heat wave. It's very unusual heat wave, and in the UK, only 5% of people have air conditioners because they didn't need air conditioning, right, up until now. And now you're having this big debate between, well, if we get more air conditioning, then that's going to be worse for climate change. But also, people have to be comfortable. So, yeah. So they're having this like weird debate over there. His mother was born in Sydney and moved to, there it is. His mother was born in Sydney, moved to US in 20s. Exactly. That and Mary, that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I love John Ossoff, because he's basically Australian. He's basically an Aussie. He's the closest thing that we can get to an Aussie being president of the United States. Yeah. Yes, very few aircons. Europe, lots of marble. It's like, yeah, exactly right, Levy. Yeah. And so, look, for me, I think they should be able to have aircon as much as anyone else. You can't, I don't think it's fair to say to them, well, if you all get air conditioning, that's going to be worse for climate change, which it might be. When we are in countries like Australia or America, a lot of people have air conditioning. It's not very fair. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah, we'll have it, but you can't have it. Like, that's not because, you know, I think the thing about when it's really hot for me is I don't really care about during the day. I care more at night when I'm sleeping. When I'm sleeping, I need to be cool. Otherwise, I can't sleep. I can't sleep when it's really hot. Yeah. That's just me, you know. And so I only have aircon on in summer, but in summer, because I live in Brisbane, it's quite a hot area. I usually will have aircon on, not during the day, just at night when I'm trying to sleep. I feel strongly about it. You're not going to talk me out of it. Yeah. And I think, I think everyone should have access to aircon if they need it, because I think it's the only thing you can do to keep yourself cool. Hi, Tamara. Thank you so much for joining, Tamara. But unfortunately, Tamara, I do have to go soon. I hate missing you. I hate missing you too, Tamara. Tamara, just to keep you updated on what's been happening, is today we discussed, what did we discuss? We discussed left-wing parties within the Democratic Party. We discussed J.D. Vance. We discussed, what else did we discuss? Housing problems. And we also discussed how the rabbit community has come after me and attacked me personally for things that I said last week and things that I'm now still suffering from. Other than that, I don't think you missed that much, Tamara. All very normal stuff, normal conversations to have. I don't think there's anything strange. I won't miss the recording. Oh no. Yes, you can watch the recording, of course, on the Joel Thomas Live recording. On that one. Are you okay? No, I'm not, Tamara. No, I'm not. My life has been turned upside down. Absolutely turned upside down. Yeah. I think you could attack any other species and still be okay. But the rabbit community, there is something about the rabbit community that's different. Seriously, Joe, the rabbit community, what did you say? What I said was last week is I was discussing how during COVID, a lot of people went down rabbit hole. See, I can't. I said it again. I said it again. Oh my God. It's going to start again. I just said it again. What I said last week is that I'm going to have to say this properly because, oh God. Don't tell me they came after you because of bunnies. No, Tamara, what happened is last week I was talking about how a lot of people went down rabbit holes on the internet. You know, when people go on the internet and they go down rabbit holes? Well, I know, Kev, I know. I accidentally said, and I'm saying this, I'm not saying it now. This is what I said last week. I said there's too many people during COVID who went down rabbit hose. And what happened from there, you will never. I'm writing a book about it tomorrow. So I have to write a book about it, obviously. And you know, and when I do write a book about, I don't think people are going to really believe what happened. So that's the mispronunciation. Yeah, I said rabbit hose, like their hose. And the thing is, is that because bunny rabbits have a reputation for sleeping around, people say breed like rabbits, they're already very sensitive about it. Do you know what I mean? Because people, when they talk about people who breed a lot, they always mention rabbits, like, breed like rabbits. So they already have that reputation. So their sensitivity levels were already up there. So for me to call them hoes when people already make references to them breeding a lot, it reinforced stereotypes that were already out there in the community. And I reinforced those stereotypes to other people. Yeah, I am going to write a book about. And so there is no other species that I could have said that about, and they would have been okay with it because other species don't have those stereotypes about them. And it's something that as soon as I said it, I knew what was going to happen. I knew the hate that was going to come towards me. And because as a supporter of the rabbit community, I'm someone that understands their sensitivities towards their lifestyle, and a lifestyle that I've always supported. I've always supported rabbits' lifestyle. If they want to breed, go ahead. It's not for me to criticize. As you know, I'm a massive supporter of all communities: black, brown, white, LGBT community, the rabbit community. Just yes, everything. Mispronunciation. And this is the problem with cancel culture. And you putting, this is the problem with cancel culture, right? Cancel culture doesn't just go after the right, it also goes after the left. And so many times people talked about being cancelled, but no one ever, and being cancelled by this particular person or some woke person on the internet, but you never heard of people being cancelled by the rabbit community. And so it shows that things are changing, right? And it's something that, for me, I've learnt, I've apologized, I've done everything I can. I went to the Rabbit Council in Brisbane. I spoke to some of their elders. I spoke to some of the elders in the rabbit community, and they accepted my apology. But they said to me, Joe, you don't, this is the thing, we as rabbit elders accept your apology, but we can't talk on behalf of all those rabbits who've been aligned with your breeders. You breed so much. Why do you have so many babies? In a lot of countries like Australia, they're called pests. They call them pests in Australia. So then you have someone like me, right? Someone like me who attacks a, a, a minority group. Well, I don't know about a minority group. I mean, there's a lot of them. Okay, so maybe not a minority. There's a lot of them. I don't think they're a minority group. They're probably a majority group. But anyway, I attack them at their most vulnerable time about something else. Pets or pests? Pests. Pests. TS. Yeah. Yeah. In Australia, they go on the farms, they eat all the food on the farms, and they're considered a pest. Yeah. El Afro was there too. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't there too. No. But yeah, so they considered pests in Australia. And so they're already on the outer edges. The last thing they needed was someone else to come in and call them hoes. Yeah. But the thing is, once it's out there, you can't put it back in. And my guidance to you or recommendations to you is watch what you say. Yeah. I don't want you going through what I went through. Okay. I don't know where I'm going to be in a week from now. I'm sorry to hear about your troubles. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Tamara. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining. I do have to go somewhere. What about the Ho community? Well, the Ho community, good question, Dave. Good question, Dave. The Ho community wasn't upset about it at all. In fact, the Ho community invited me in to become part of their community. But I just said, look, I'm not, that's not who I am. I'm not a Ho. And it was a mispronunciation. But they will do, the Ho community, to be honest with you, will do anything for any free publicity. And they always have. And it's not that I'm against the Ho community. It's that, it's just that I don't support the Ho community. I'm ambivalent at best about the Ho community. But massive support. Bunny discrimination has consequences. Hoes are people too. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And you know what? I don't call it cancel culture. I call it consequence culture. And that's what it is. It's consequence culture, not cancel culture. There are consequences to saying certain things online. And I found that out. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining. Bunnies are sacred. Yep, let's all positivity to the bunnies and the world. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'll talk to you guys later. How was Nibbles during this whole crisis? Just quickly before I go, Nibbles has actually turned against me. Nibbles turned against me because she's worried that, I said this before, that if I go after the rabbit species, that maybe she'll be next. So that's Nibbles, but hopefully she'll forgive me. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.